Angel's Rest, the most sinister church in America. In the heart of South Carolina's swamplands, where the Spanish moss drapes over twisted cypress trees and the mist rises like restless ghosts, there stands a ruin locals fear to approach, the place once known as Angel's Rest Chapel. Few dare to speak its name, and those who do lower their voices, as if the trees themselves are listening. This crumbling sanctuary, forgotten by time but never forgiven by history, hides one of America's darkest and most disturbing secrets. Between 1789 and 1832, more than 200 men, women, and children entered its doors seeking safety and never walked out again. The story begins with the Whitworth family, one of the most powerful names in the Low Country. Gabriel Whitworth, a towering man with silver hair and a voice like a preacher's trumpet, purchased a 1,000-acre plantation he named Seraphim's Grace. To outsiders, he was a man of faith, a pillar of the community, a man offering shelter to the desperate. Escaped slaves, debtors on the run, widows with nowhere to go. But behind closed doors, Gabriel and his secretive order of fallen angels had turned the plantation chapel into something far darker. A place where the weak and the vulnerable were systematically cleansed. They believed they were doing God's work, purging sin through sacrifice. Constance Whitworth, Gabriel's wife, was the picture of Southern grace. Delicate, pale, and soft-spoken. Yet neighbors whispered that her eyes were strange, distant, as though she were watching something no one else could see. Their children were raised not just as heirs to the plantation but as instruments of judgment. Ezekiel, the eldest son, was sharp-minded and cold-hearted, enforcing his father's will with ruthless efficiency. Miriam, beautiful and disarming, was the family's lure. The angelic face that convinced strangers they were safe before leading them to slaughter. The twins, Cain and Abel, perfected the art of pain. Cain was a brute with hands built for violence, while Abel preferred cleverness, inventing new ways to break his victims' minds before their bodies. And then there was Lilith, the youngest, still learning her part but already watching with fascination as her family played God. Over the years, the chapel became a machine of death. Travelers would disappear, runaways would vanish, and locals would whisper about the mercy the Whitworths offered. Mercy that came with no return. The family kept meticulous records of every soul taken, every prayer offered before the final blow, every hymn sung as lives were extinguished. These records, hidden away until 1923, were so detailed and so horrifying that authorities sealed them immediately. Historians who caught a glimpse reported that the murders were not acts of passion but of ritual, carried out with almost industrial precision. What made Angel's Rest so terrifying wasn't just the scale of the killings. It was the fact that the community allowed it. People looked the other way. Some were complicit, profiting from the disappearance of enemies or rivals. Others were too afraid to speak out, believing the Whitworths untouchable. And some even believed Gabriel's sermons, that these deaths were purifications, that God demanded blood to keep the land safe. By the 1830s, whispers of what really happened at Angel's Rest began to spread beyond the county. The plantation was abandoned under mysterious circumstances. Some say an entire night of screams echoed from the chapel, and by morning the Whitworths were gone. Some claimed they fled to New Orleans. Others believed they were hunted down by those seeking revenge. No bodies were ever found, no graves uncovered, just the rotting chapel and the legends that grew wilder with every passing decade. In 1923, a team of researchers uncovered the hidden records in a false wall beneath the chapel pulpit. What they found shocked even hardened historians. Each page detailed a redemption, describing the victims, their sins, and the cleansing rites used to end their lives. The documents were sealed by the state, and the site declared off-limits, but the damage was done. The legend of Angel's Rest was reborn. Paranormal investigators claim the place is one of the most haunted sites in America. Visitors report hearing hymns sung in the dead of night, seeing ghostly figures of women and children kneeling in prayer, and feeling cold hands brush against their skin. Today, Angel's Rest remains a magnet for the brave, or the foolish. True crime enthusiasts, ghost hunters, and thrill-seekers trek through the swamps to see the ruin for themselves. Some leave shaken, swearing they heard voices calling their name. A few never return, adding fresh chapters to the centuries-old nightmare. This is more than just a story of murder. It is a story about the darkness that hides behind respectability, about what happens when power is unchecked and evil wears the mask of righteousness. The Whitworths are long gone, but the questions they leave behind still linger. How many of their victims were truly guilty of anything? How many were simply in the wrong place at the wrong time? And perhaps most chilling of all, could something like this happen again? If you have made it this far, you are part of the few willing to face this history without flinching. Make sure to subscribe because the deeper we dig, the darker the secrets we uncover. Drop a comment telling us where you are watching from. We want to know how far these voices are reaching. And if you are ever near Charleston, think twice before following the dirt road that leads into the swamp. Angel's Rest waits there, patient as ever, ready to welcome the next soul who dares to cross its threshold.